afternoon. At the end of the day, we can endure much more than we think we can. Frida Kahlo. Frida Kahlo was a Mexican painter born in Coyoacán, Mexican City, Mexico, and she was born on July 6th in 1907. When she was only 6 years old, she contracted polio, and this caused her to be bedridden for many months. She wore long skirts to hide the fact that her right leg was much thinner than the left. Although she was disabled by polio as a child, she was a promising student that was headed to medical school. She was one of the only female students at this prestigious school that she attended. But all of this changed on September 17th in 1925 when she was only 18 years old. She was in a terrible bus accident when she was on her way home from school one day. They were sitting on the bus and bam, a car ran into them. She was impaled by a handrail that went through her spine and it went through and through her pelvis. While she was in recovery, she was in a full body cast and spent months lying on her back. And according to the Frida Kahlo Foundation, she turned her attention away from studying medicine and to painting. Her mother even made her a special easel so she could paint while in bed. And her parents put a mirror above her so she could paint self-portraits of herself. And actually, one of her most popular paintings is this one right here. And it was painted in 1944 during recovery from spinal surgery. She ended up getting things fixed from the accident, and so she painted this during that time. This painting is called The Broken Column, and it showed the devastation to her body from the bus accident. It also shows her torso cut down the middle, opened, and being held together by a brace. In 1929, she married Diego Rivera, who was also a Mexican artist. And although Kahlo's mother did not approve, they went away and did with it anyway. And they actually had the nickname of the dove and elephant, and I put a picture here to try to show it why. But her father gave them this nickname, and he was doing this to express their extreme size differences. The two ended up, they were married, they traveled through Mexico and the United States during the 20s and 30s. This is when Frida was able to develop her artistic style as they traveled. And she got her inspiration from Mexican culture during this time. And then they returned to Mexico City in 1934. This is when her health problems started to rise again. So they went back home. And then in 1937, she painted Memory the Heart. I think you can see that, yeah. This painting showed Kahlo's pain over her husband's affair with her younger sister, Christina. And you can see she has an arrow that comes through and her heart is out and on the ground. And that just shows the devastation that she was facing during this time. So she ends up divorcing Rivera in 1939, but they end up getting married again in 1940, and after they got married the second time, they remained married until their death. During this time, while they were divorced, she chopped off her hair super short. She did this because Rivera loved her long hair, and she did another self-portrait with her hair. And as you can see, her hair was maybe an inch thick. She's in a man suit. She's just sitting there, and there's some lyrics behind her that she painted that translate to, "Look, if I loved you, it was because of your hair. Now that you are without hair, I don't love you anymore." Obviously, this was a hit at her ex-husband at the time because he just valued her hair so much, and she just wanted to show that she did not need her hair at all, so she just chopped it short. And of course, she was sad that Rivera had an affair with her sister, but she was not innocent. She was openly bisexual throughout all of these years, and she had many affairs during their marriage. One of her affairs was with Nicholas Murray, and it lasted for 10 years. So maybe she was sad about her sister betraying her like that, but in reality, she had done the same thing to him for 10 years. And then throughout the 1940s, she participated in exhibitions in Mexico and taught as a teacher at the La Esmeralda. In this same decade, her health started to decline rapidly. She received a commission from the Mexican government for 5 portraits of important women in 1941. This same year, her father ended up dying and she wasn't able to finish the project. In 1950, she was diagnosed with gangrene in her right foot. And then later in 1953, she spent 9 months in the hospital and had tons of surgeries. She ended up having her whole right leg amputated during this time. But during this time as well, she received her first solo exhibition in Mexico. And she was bedridden during this time due to her health problems, but she did not let that stop her. She showed up to the exhibition in an ambulance, and she stayed throughout the night. They built her a bedpost so she could sit in the bed and still interact with people and still be at her first solo exhibition and all this kind of stuff. So it was really cool that she put in all this effort, even though, she was obviously sick and had just been out of surgery. The next year, she ended up dying in 1954 on July 13th. She allegedly died from a pulmonary embolism, but a few days before her death, she wrote in her diary, "I hope this exit is joyful, and I hope to never return." This is why some believe that she actually died by suicide, because the nurse that was at her house during her time of being sick counted her painkillers from her surgery and noticed that from that night, she took 11 that night. She had gotten a dependency on these painkillers, but this one night she took 11, which is why they believe it was suicide. And she also gave her husband their wedding anniversary present over a month in advance. So there was a lot of signs that pointed to suicide. She was depressed with his affairs. She was still sad over them, and he continued to have affairs even after she caught him with Christina. So there was just a lot of things that led her to suicide, or what people believe to be a suicide. But there was no autopsy performed, so we really would never know. After reading an article on FridaKahlo.org, I learned that she didn't sell many of her paintings during her time. She maybe sold one or two for a couple $100. But do you know how much her paintings sell for today? In 2006, a self-portrait sold for $5.62 million. And that set a record for the most expensive Latin American work ever purchased in auction. And that makes her one of the highest selling women in art. So as can be seen, Frida Kahlo has made an impact on so many people. She became an icon for the LGBTQ community and the feminism movement. She created art that's still being talked about today, and she stood for what she believed in. She stood for what was right. I encourage you all to take a deeper look at more of her paintings and see what else you can relate to. Because as Kahlo once said, "My painting carries with it the message of pain." Thank you.